Hi, I'm Derek Carr. I'd like to talk about one of the most concerning issues in this country. Have you ever asked yourself, does Davante Adams get the ball enough? Do you ever sit around on an idle Tuesday and ponder about the lack of balls in Davante's hands? I do. Last season, he was targeted 169 times in Green Bay. This is unacceptable. With your help, I, Derek Dallas Carr, plan on targeting Davante Adams on every play of the 2022 season. Join me as I petition to force all opposing quarterbacks to also target Davante Adams while he sits on the bench. Follow me as I, Derek Carr, brother of David Carr, fight to retroactively add all my previous career throws to Davante Adams' stat sheet. Submit and swear your allegiance to me, Derek Carr, as I join forces with Malik, the ancient god of child sacrifice. Together, we will forge a path to victory, ensuring targets to Davante Adams and, consequently, the death of thousands of children in the Las Vegas area. Thank you.
Kickers are people too. Kickers are football players. Kickers are hyper masculine. They have to be. They're 5'6", 5'7", 130, 140 pounds in locker rooms with offensive linemen and running backs who are like 6'4", 220. So kickers have egos. They want to be great too. Allow kickers to be great. That's all we ask here at the Recap Center. Allow kickers to be great. Everyone laughs when I pick up Justin Tucker, because I pick him up every year. Of course I do. He's the most accurate kicker in NFL history. Every broadcast that's had for the Ravens, they always have to remind you that he is the most accurate kicker in NFL history. But kickers have to be given the permission to be great in this league. And I've wanted kickers to be great for over a year now. I've mentioned this and I've been ignored time and time again by the commish or the other people in the league who just don't believe in kickers having actual value. As it stands, the kicking settings are as follows. An extra point gets you 1 point. If you miss a field goal, it's -1. A kick 0 to 39 yards is 3 points. 40 to 49 yards is 4 points. 50 to 59 yards is 5 points. And 60 plus 5 points. Why is 60 plus still 5 points? When Justin Tucker kicked his historic kick last year, and that's not because he's my kicker, it's because it was a historic kick, we knew that, or rather we know that the NFL is a copycat league, so other kickers will now have the opportunity to do the same because offenses will believe in the ability to kick that within a game scenario or to attempt it within a game scenario. Normalizing longer kicks. This is the evolution of the game. This is how it works. We have such outdated settings for kicks. If Andy would have hit the 64-yard field goal attempt last night by McManus, he would have gotten 5 points. He would have still won the game. He was already winning by 1. But my point is, what is the added incentive to having kickers that are great amongst all kickers? Justin Tucker is great amongst kickers. And part of the reason is that the Ravens allow him to have those attempts. If this season we have a McManus or whatever other kicker whose name I don't know, Orlando has a gay kicker, whatever other kicker makes those attempts and possibly makes 2 60-plus yard kicks, what incentive does anyone in this league have to select that kicker for the very next year? Now, I know I'm splitting hairs. It's only 5 points or 6 points. But sometimes 1 point can make all of the difference. Why? Well, look at this fucking week. We've got 2 ties. We'll get to the ties in a second. So what's the incentive for picking elite kickers? Don't laugh when I say that. I know you want to laugh at me when I say elite kickers. I know. It's like, it's like the best student in a special ed class. I know they're not that valuable. When I say kickers are people too, I mean it jokingly because kickers are kickers. Justin Tucker this week did what he did. He didn't do much. I think he scored about 4 or 5 points, but elite kickers are no different than elite tight ends. They're not that far from each other. You only have about 2 to 3 elite tight ends. There's an incentive to pick Travis Kelce. There's an incentive to pick Mark Andrews because they will be fed the ball. Now, the differences between some of these kickers may be several 60-yard field goals. There will be a lot more this season because of what Justin Tucker did. It's what paving the way is all about. You set the precedent and everyone else follows. That's what it's all about. And I've been ignored this whole time. I don't know if you guys think I'm being hyperbolic. I don't know if you guys think I'm trolling. I don't know if the commission listens to this and he doesn't care, so he ignores it. But I've mentioned this several times. I've mentioned this many times. Over a year ago, I mentioned this. You see, this wouldn't have had any this wouldn't have had any effect on any of the scores. The more and more that you see these things, the more and more we have to question, are the kick settings outdated? And the answer to that, of course, is yes. This is your week 1 recap. Bundy here, you there. Of course, we had some ties this week, making Andy very, very happy because, of course, Andy loves nothing more than to be tethered to other men. So let's start off with the week 1 scores. We have Tim Bundy tying up with Highlander 80-80. I just have to say, fuck David Carr. As a staff, as a record label, and as a motherfucking crew, David Carr just kept force-feeding Davante Adams again and again and again and again. What is it with these quarterbacks, these second-tier quarterbacks who get these new little toys, and now he thinks, oh, I'm going to do my best Aaron Rodgers impersonation, and in the last drive, I'm just going to keep giving it to Davante, and he'll figure it out, or I'll figure it out. You're not Aaron Rodgers, sir. I knew this was going to happen. Soon as the last drive came, I knew that they were going to end this in an interception. I had no fear in my heart whatsoever that Davante was going to get more points because I knew that David Carr was more driven by his need to either pad stats or I don't know, make a moment or try to make a statement or something. And I just knew that it was going to be an interception, specifically to Davante Adams, not to anyone else, not to Waller, but just to Davante Adams. And because of that, Josh Jacobs gets 10 carries, 57 yards, 1 catch for 16 yards. 1 catch for 16 yards. Look at that. 73 total scrimmage yards. I think he had a decent game. Don't you laugh at me. Anyone who laughs at me about Josh Jacobs, I'm gonna spit in your fucking face. I know somebody during the fantasy draft, you know, they made fun of me picking up Josh Jacobs, and I get it. I understand. I've made fun of Andy for picking up Josh Jacobs in the past, but I was pleased with his performance, and he will be in my flex slot for week 2. But this was a tie nonetheless. Highlander gets a 0 from Cam Akers because he's a fucking idiot. And we kind of deserve each other because Keenan Allen and Chris Godwin both got injured. They were out of the games relatively early, I guess, or at least at the midway point of the games. I get an 18 from Kareem Hunt on my bench. That always feels great. And I get, I think, my first tie ever. I think that's what it is. I think Eric mentioned that I've never had a tie. I don't remember. I might have had one, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I just don't tie. I don't do that. We either die or we kill here. This is what we do. But apparently, when you're playing Andy. You just can't escape Andy's bad energy. Moving on to Rollo Tomassi, winning 109-82 over Plathanos. 4 disappointing points from Elijah Mitchell. I just had to point that out. It was like the first thing that I saw when I clicked on the matchup. I'm sorry, Paul. 17 points from Joe Burrow or Barrow. I never said Barone. I don't know what Eric's talking about. Joe Barone? Did I? We misspeak all the time here at the Recap Center. We talk. This is what we do. Joe Burrow or Joe Barrow with 5 interceptions. A horrible game for Joe Burrow, but, at least he got 17 points. At least he did that. Diggs with 18, 13 for Mike Evans, 18 for Travis Kelce. Paul with a very strong performance. Hensel with 34 points from Patrick Mahomes. A disappointing performance from Derrick Henry. And there were many disappointing performances this week by players who, some number 1 picks and others whom you would just expect to just deliver strong performances, and they were just horrible. But we'll get to that list in a second. Overall, Hensel's team did nothing, and it's this year will be more of the same for Hensel. More of the same. The Kirk
John Madden Award for Fantasy Excellence. The John Madden Award for Fantasy Excellence
goes to Spider-Man, defeating Ewok Rape 133-117, 23 points from DeAndre Swift. That Russell Wilson didn't have the greatest game. 27 points from Saquon Barkley. You better savor that shit, because you're not going to have much of it when he gets hurt by week 3. Of course, you have a gay kicker who scored 6 points, and Mike Thomas, gets his little 17 points. I'm just looking at Orlando's team, and part of it might be hating. Sure, of course. This is what all this is. This is all this is made up of. George Kittle injured on IR for Orlando, so that's number 1. I told you last week that Orlando was taking chances on a lot of these players. So Kittle, week 1, and I'm just waiting around to see, is it going to be Saquon? Is it going to be Michael Thomas? Because Michael Thomas always does that fucking stupid ass, he flexes his muscles. I think that's the corniest football celebration of all times. It's like something that an autistic kid who's like 3 years old and he finishes his lunch while he's sitting on his high chair. It's something that he does. It's so fucking stupid. I'd rather you do one of those cliche TikTok dances or something like that. Jalen Hurts with a good performance, 24 points, and some disappointing. Let's just read off the list, because Najee Harris is a part of the list. So overall, you had a lot of disappointing performances by a lot of players. You had Aaron Rodgers with 3 points. You had Alvin Kamara with 3 points. You had Austin Eckler with 6 points. Aaron Jones with 6. Cam Akers, as I said, for Andy with 0. For me, I had David Montgomery with 4. Derrick Henry with 8. Najee Harris here for Eric with 8 points. And let's be CMC, I'll also throw him on that list. At the bottom of that list, at least, with 11 points, and that's all because he's a number 1 pick, and you just wouldn't expect him to score 11 points if he's healthy, because he's CMC. So if you're Pedro, you really have to feel like shit, because it's like week 1, you also tie, and your number 1 pick scores 11, and he'll be hurt by like week 5. So 2 of those players belong to Pedro. We moved on to the 69 and 69 affair between Joelicus Maximus and La Bamba. And Charles Edwards-Helaire with a good performance for Joe with 19 points, 7 points from Matthew Stafford. This is what you're gonna get. This is what you're gonna get this year, Joe. What you're gonna get this year is what you got this week. You got 18 points from Cooper Kupp, who was your number 1 pick. Cool. That's a now move for Cooper Kupp. You stacked him up with Matthew Stafford, and I suggested that you should get a better quarterback, and there were 7 points from Matthew Stafford. If it's a one-man game, if it's a one-man show, if it's Cooper Kupp with Matthew Stafford, then it's pointless. I believe that if you are trying to create a Hydra, the power of the Hydra is in the ability of the quarterback to spread the ball. There's no sense in picking up Cooper Kupp and of course Joe didn't know this, it's just my observation from what I'm watching, and if it continues to happen, it's really a pointless selection, because if he's just feeding Cooper Kupp and say Cooper Kupp gets 24 points next week, kudos to you. It's a great number one selection, and it seems like he's on track to doing the same thing that he did last season, even though I don't think he's going to be number one. What's the point in doing it if he's just feeding Cooper Kupp? If he's only going to, if he's not going to spread the ball and he's just hitting off Cooper Kupp, and if he's only having success with Cooper Kupp, rather, then there's no point in picking him up. You might as well just pick another quarterback that is better than a Matthew Stafford. Are you surprised at this point that Matthew Stafford gets 7 points to open up the season? I don't see any Megatrons around anywhere. I don't see any Calvin Johnsons around anywhere. This guy, he's never been that guy. He's never been that fantasy guy. And anybody who's ever started him is wasting their time. Stop it, Joe. Stop it. Yeah, and that basically wraps that one up. So moving on to Charles Lee J. Ray defeating Harlem Heat 92-80. Harlem Heat, of course, as I said last week, he has no running backs. Where are these points going to come from? 18 points from Jamar Chase. Awesome. 10 points from Deebo Samuel. I guess he's your wide receiver too. So, that's not terrible, but it's not great, because I'm sure Ed was expecting him to be the Deebo Samuel of last year. 9 points from Tyreek Hill in the flex slot. But where are those consistent running back points going to come from? He got nothing from his bench whatsoever. I mean, if you can at least look at your bench and say, well, I did that, then moving forward, you can make some changes and improve your squad. But Ed doesn't even have that. Because realistically, he only has one functioning running back on his bench, because Brian Robinson got hurt. I don't even know who he is. I'm just mentioning him because he's on the screen right now. But he's got Garrett Wilson not Garrett Wilson. He's got Isaiah Spiller for the Chargers. Like, where's it going to come from? Where is that consistent running back production going to come from? Ed needs to make a trade, and he needs to make a trade pronto. Apparently, that's something that Ed was on the ball for a trade, I think, like 5 minutes into the fantasy draft, apparently. Over on the other side, as I said, Austin Eckler with a disappointing performance. Jay overall had a disappointing performance because his three-headed monster really didn't do anything. Herbert did his thing, but there wasn't any production from Mike Williams or from Eckler. Gabe Davis, of course, with 14 points, and his kicker was the real difference maker of the week. 18 points from Koo, the Asian kicker from the Atlanta Falcons. Great. That's awesome, Jay. Moving on to the standings in the Techno Viking division, you have Rollo Tomassi at 1-0, a bunch of ties, and Hensel at 0-1. Over in the Afro Ninja division, we have Spider-Man at 1-0, Charles Lee Chargers with 1-0, Andy tied, Eric lost, and Harlem Heat lost. The highest scoring teams in the league are as follows: 133, as mentioned, with Spider-Man, 117, Ewok Rape, Rollo Tomassi with 109, Charles Lee Chargers with 92, and Plathanos with 82 points. Also, obviously, with their tie, 69 points apiece, La Bamba and Joe get to share the Tito Award this week. I don't think that's the first time that's happened. I think that did that happen last year? We have to look into the papers for that one, but I suspect that wasn't the first time that it happened, but who knows? So let's move on to the week 2 matchups. You have Team Bundy going up against Joelicus Maximus, Spider-Man against Rollo Tomassi, the Highlander 2 against Charles Lee Chargers, Plathanos versus La Bamba, and Ewok Rape going up against Harlem Heat. That's all I got for you, folks. That's all I got for you. Fuck David Carr. Let's change the kicking settings in this league. They must be changed. What incentive does anyone have to picking a kicker? What incentive? Don't laugh at me. I know kickers are a joke. But why should you pick up the number one kicker if we aren't going to maximize what kickers or kicking has adjusted to in 2022? You hear me, commish? You hear me? So as always, may your quarterbacks get hurt before they leave the locker room. May your running backs pull their hamstrings. And may your wide receivers get arrested for marijuana possession. Go fuck yourselves.